Star Wars has a real problem. I spent the last week or so thinking about Star Wars thanks to Disney and Lucasfilm, who allowed me media access to this year's Star Wars celebration. It's a convention of all things Star Wars that's put on by Disney and Lucasfilm themselves. The convention had an exhibitor hall full of stuff to purchase and to preview. There were announcements made about new TV shows and books. There were panels and podcast tapings that fans themselves put on. The convention really gives a voice to the audience and allows them to dig deeper into the stories that we all love. I enjoyed talking with cosplayers, learning about the mythology, and wandering around the showroom floor. I even purchased some artwork while I was there. I planned on doing something a bit more positive with this video, and I wanted to show off all of the things that I saw and enjoyed because I desperately want to be positive about Star Wars. But unfortunately, that's just not what this video is gonna be. I grew up in the days of the prequels, and I remember the hate that each of those films received, without ever fully really knowing why. Now, in the era where Disney owns Lucasfilm, that just seems to have gotten much worse. And at Celebration, that hateful side of the audience wasn't there on the surface, but if you hung around long enough, listened in to some conversations or some panels, you might have seen it like I did. My name's Josh Taylor, this is Modern Mouse, and today I want to talk about the fans of Star Wars. Why so many differing opinions and divisive opinions can be dangerous, and the possible solutions to repair an entire fandom. If you followed Modern Mouse, this channel, for long enough, you may have seen that my friends and I have made a ton of different videos about Star Wars, and maybe you've seen some of the comment sections that are under those videos. I've seen comments about Star Wars being woke, or how Disney ruined Star Wars, how feminism ruined Star Wars, or how Kathleen Kennedy ruined Star Wars. In fact, I made a whole video about Kathleen Kennedy and the opinions about her that I think are unjustified.
Star Wars has always been most loved by young white males, but like comics and everything else white males enjoy, they now have to share or give up.
The point is, I'm no stranger to the online community that surrounds Star Wars, and some of the toxicity that goes along with it. Knowing all of that, I was still excited to go to Star Wars Celebration, since I'd never really been before. I enjoy these characters. I enjoy the world building and the backstories. I was hoping that that online community that I frequently saw wasn't the same in real life. And being fully transparent, I was invited to Star Wars Celebration as media, and the way that I got the badge is by letting Lucasfilm and Disney know what I was going to be making a video about. I told them I wanted to make a video about Star Wars fans, and while that's true, I think that they were probably hoping for something a bit more positive, which is what I wanted to do. So I'm sorry to the people that I emailed who are now going to see this video. I may not get invited to a Disney or Lucasfilm event ever again, but I'd feel worse if I didn't say this. The problem with Star Wars fans is how passionate and opinionated they are. That alone isn't a bad thing. It's when fans have their opinions and believe that they're fact instead of subjective viewpoints. And combine those headstrong opinions with discrimination, and you've got something that becomes even worse, that eventually bleeds into the real world. And it's not just Star Wars. You can copy and paste a bunch of different fandoms into this same argument, but for the sake of this video, we're just gonna focus on Star Wars. Ever since 1977, when Star Wars became part of pop culture, everyone has had their opinions, and opinions are completely fine to have, like I said. Some folks didn't care for Ewoks, some believed that nothing could be as good as the original film, some people thought that the prequels had too many computer-generated effects, some people believed that George Lucas should have never tampered with the original trilogy. But the internet gave people a platform. And that's when opinions went from personal feelings to personal attacks.
It's because, you know, when you watch these movies, you got to think, like, who is this for? Who is this girl power shit for? Girls are not watching Star Wars. Star Wars is not for girls. It's an action movie for boys. Boys want to be Jedi, not girls.
Jake Lloyd quit acting after his role as young Anakin in The Phantom Menace, and he attributes that to both real-world and online bullying. He was one of the first casualties of the internet age when it comes to Star Wars fandom. He was a young actor asked to do a job. He got paid for that job, and he was also harassed online for it, and even for things that he had no involvement in. It's not his fault that people didn't like the dialogue or journey of a young Anakin Skywalker. His lines were already written for him. He was directed to act in a certain way. As a child actor, he was of no status to make demands and change the character. He did his part, he read his lines, he did the job, and because of that, he ended up leaving the film industry altogether. Daisy Ridley, John Boyega, and Kelly Marie Tran from the sequel trilogy all had fan outrage coming at them. Tran cut off all social media. Boyega felt betrayed and angry that racist remarks were coming his way. Daisy Ridley continues to be called a Mary Sue and continues to not be acknowledged by a portion of the fan base. And now, the newest actor to receive derogatory remarks and even death threats is Moses Ingram. The other actor to get slander is Vivian Lyra Blair, who's playing a young Leia. Their backlash goes beyond criticism, and it falls into hateful rhetoric. And those are all of the actors and the people that are creating Star Wars. That isn't even touching on how fans treat each other when opinions differ. I also find it a bit ridiculous that one of the main points of contention among Star Wars fans is the writing. Yet the writers never get this hate. It's always the actors portraying those characters on screen saying that writing, saying that dialogue. And by the way, the writers of these films should not be facing harassment. Nobody should be facing any kind of harassment for creating a piece of entertainment. And in making this video, I'm also not stating that Disney or Lucasfilm should be free of being critiqued. They absolutely should be critiqued for some of the things that they've done wrong. Minimizing John Boyega on advertising in the Chinese market so that they could make more money in China seems a bit discriminatory and wrong on Disney and Lucasfilm's part. And add that to the questionable and dumb corporate decisions that Disney has made over the last few years. But Kathleen Kennedy, as a leader, has been thrown under the bus for the wrong reasons. I made an entire video about her accomplishments and how I felt she was wrongfully blamed for the missteps that Star Wars had. Has she made missteps? Yes. Solo didn't do well at the box office, and the sequel trilogy probably should have been planned out a bit more. And the whole blaming Solo on the actors is quite a bit silly, but she's made more hits than misses at Lucasfilm, and under Disney's management, she's grown the brand considerably. If you aren't happy with the direction that Star Wars was headed in, I think that sending death threats and bullying people just isn't the way to achieve any change.
This entire thing is about Leia and about showing you that women were in the Empire. Women were relevant. We are here to right the wrongs of George Lucas and the 80s and all of the toxic masculinity, and to show you that men are terrible. And
like, if you went to your favorite restaurant and for whatever reason the food and drink that night just wasn't up to par, it wasn't great, you wouldn't just harass the entire staff, because then you'd probably be kicked out of the restaurant and asked to never return. Instead, it's probably best to talk to the staff to understand what happened. I know that I've been comped a meal or two for being understanding and appreciative of the work that people do, even on some of their worst nights. So why do people get so upset about Star Wars? Why do people become jaded and angry and argumentative? Ultimately, Star Wars is based around mythology, classic stories, morality tales. They contain themes of heroism, family, love, and so on. These stories are very personal to fans, and they mean something different to everyone. If you're a fan of Star Wars, you probably love it for a different reason than somebody else does. That said, it's a tall order to try and appeal to everyone, and continue telling stories from a galaxy far, far away over the span of decades. It's difficult to keep it fresh and exciting while still keeping the legacy of what was already created alive. When I walked into Star Wars Celebration, I was legitimately excited. I wanted to enjoy these stories and see the creativity that so many people had when it came to playing in this sandbox. The amount of amazing cosplays that I saw were stellar. The artists that were selling artwork had some of the best stuff that I've ever seen. Like I said, I bought something for myself. In fact, I'll show you right now. I ended up buying this cool piece of artwork around Cloud City because it's my favorite location in all of Star Wars. I ended up attending panels, walking the show floor, but as the 4 days went on, it kind of felt like as long as you didn't say your opinion out loud, there would be no repercussions. But every now and then, I was asked about my opinion, and sometimes I feared saying it out loud. I had a few friends who went to different panels put on by fans, and when certain topics were brought up, they felt a bit uncomfortable. And even I went to a panel where people were asked to raise their hand if they liked the movie The Last Jedi. And I was kind of reluctant to raise my hand, as were many people in the room. And when people did raise their hands, the host of that panel actually had to talk about it to change the atmosphere of the room, because there was just a weird feeling. I can't really explain it. But there really shouldn't be a reason to have to do that sort of thing. There shouldn't have to be a reason to say that this is a safe place or that your opinion matters. Because of course my opinion matters. Like I said, this isn't a Star Wars thing necessarily. As Obi-Wan Kenobi came out on Disney+, the trailer for the new Pinocchio live-action film also came out for Disney+, and it took me less than a day to see racist remarks on social media after the casting of Cynthia Erivo, a black woman, as the blue fairy in that film.
Fucking ridiculous. Fairies are supposed to be cute. You're supposed to have a babe. I've got some, I mean, it looks like a kind of like a late stage AIDS victim with fairy wings.
And Marvel continues to see hate coming in for a variety of its characters. It happens in nearly every fandom. So this isn't just a Star Wars situation. Another piece of history to bring context to all of this. Starting back in 2014, Gamergate was a movement to discriminate and harass women in the video game industry. And as games like Call of Duty and Fortnite became popular to stream online, the people running those streams talked to their young male audience about things they felt they'd like. Many of those conversations were anti-feminist or white supremacist conversations. Eventually, those conversations bled over into the real world, and thanks to a lack of ever being checked up on, people started creating groups and events that shared these radical ideas.
Chicago. It's Anita's first speaking engagement since threats of a shooting massacre forced her to cancel her last appearance. All because this media critic dared to criticize something millions of us play every day.
Who plays video games?
Video games.
And there's now massive evidence proving that online gaming created a pipeline to radical hate speech. It's an issue because these groups met online in very specific games, outside of mainstream culture. But then those views bled into the mainstream, into people's politics and social issue ideas. So how do we change something like Star Wars? How do we change something that's so divisive that allows for bullying and harassment and sexism and racism? I made a video a few years ago called The Story Behind Song of the South and Why Anti-Racism Matters. And what I received were a ton of comments that either didn't understand my message and wanted to fight against it, or they didn't see any issue with the racism and discrimination that continues to exist in the world. They can just simply ignore it. In that video, I stated that anti-racism isn't just not being racist. It's about calling out racist behavior when you see it. One of the major glaring problems that we have in our society is that we turn a blind eye to people that we don't want to deal with for our own personal fears of being bullied and harassed ourselves. But we consistently see that kind of conversation with family members or old high school friends you see on Facebook or wherever. I've had countless videos where the comment section was not really great looking, and I expect for those comments to come in on this video, probably from people who haven't even made it this far into the video. But my answer isn't to ignore those comments, it's to answer them. And I have to decipher what's criticism and what's just hateful. But how do you go about doing that? You have to ask yourself if this criticism is productive. Let's go back to the restaurant analogy. A restaurant will understand critique from somebody who's calm and rational and wants that restaurant to be better than it is. Somebody who's rude is just going to get kicked out, even if they seem to have an argument somewhere buried deep in there.
So for the slow people who are triggered by this, like this Casey whatever the crap, for the slow people in the back, not my regular viewers, you guys are awesome, but for the slow ones like this one here, when Disney decides to use their marketing, well, you guys know this, use their marketing and stuff to exploit actors of certain gender, ethnicity, whatever the case.
There are a lot of ways to go about critiquing things, but bullying and hate speech just isn't one of them, even in the entertainment business. If you're online and you see somebody being critical, don't be afraid to engage in that conversation, to debate somebody about a certain topic, or to share your own opinions. But if that conversation turns into somebody being hateful or bullying, somebody who's aggressively calling names, let them know that you don't appreciate that kind of conversation and that you're willing to report that comment or that video. I've talked to a lot of different people and I've changed certain people's perspectives because they weren't being hateful, they just had harsh criticisms. And maybe they didn't know how to express those criticisms in the right way. But they weren't trying to be bad people. So I say engage, especially if it's online. But in the real world, in your everyday life, that becomes a little bit trickier. If you're at a convention with a ton of people around like I was, I'd say that that's a pretty safe place, especially to engage with people, connect, have opinions, and debate topics. And in a setting like that, if somebody is really discriminatory, starts using hateful speech, and starts bullying other people, a giant group like that is going to eventually call them out. What you shouldn't do though is start mimicking their behavior. Don't fall to their level. It's that kill them with kindness kind of mentality that you should bring to the table. But don't put yourself into any kind of dangerous situation. If you feel uneasy, back away, especially in one-on-one situations where you don't have a large group around. If you feel comfortable in that situation, feel free to discuss and debate, but all I'm saying is trust your instinct, trust your gut, and if you don't feel safe about something, you don't have to engage. And I know that there's way more solutions. These are just the few that come off the top of my head. So if you have any ideas about how to stop hate speech in fandoms, and especially in the Star Wars fandom, leave a comment down below. Let people know so that they can engage with you and engage in the rest of the community. I'm of the belief that there's plenty of good people in the world, and there's plenty of good people in every fandom. The world is a much kinder place than many of us probably realize, but we'll never see it if we continue to allow hateful egos to take center stage. Hate can be drowned out by conversations and acts of camaraderie and love. They can bring together fandoms rather than divide them. Hopefully you have some thoughts on this and some opinions. I know I do, and I had to make this video. Again, sorry Disney and Lucasfilm. I felt like I had to make this video. And make sure to check out some of my other videos, one right here if you're interested, or another one here. And in the meantime, thank you for checking out all I do, for following along, subscribing, liking, all that other stuff. And until next time, my friends, keep moving forward.